On a harsh winter night in Montana, when the temperature outside dropped to nearly 10 degrees, an elderly man named David, who lived alone in a log cabin deep in the forest, was suddenly awakened by strange sounds coming from his door. It wasn't the howl of the wind, nor the footsteps of a human, but a faint, desperate scratching, as if someone were begging for life itself. When David opened the door, he was stunned to find a wild bobcat and her tiny cubs, shivering from the cold, standing on the fragile line between life and death. But what could have driven a wild animal, one that normally fears humans, to risk everything by approaching his home in the darkness of that night? Was this merely a chance encounter or the beginning of an extraordinary bond between humanity and nature? And in that bone-chilling cold, what hidden dangers were quietly waiting beyond the old wooden door? What happened next could put the courage, compassion, and survival instincts of everyone involved to the ultimate test. Before we step into this deeply moving story, don't forget to like the video if you love stories about the bond between humans and wildlife. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our latest storytelling videos, and turn on notifications to join us on every emotional journey that lies ahead. What could possibly make a wild bobcat abandon the safety of the wilderness and approach a human dwelling in a deadly blizzard? The question David knew hung in the frigid Montana air, a desperate whisper swallowed by the howling wind. David, a man whose 65 years had etched lines of loneliness around his eyes, was deep in the throes of it. The vast, silent expanse of his remote cabin had become a tomb since Martha left him, not by choice, but by the relentless march of time and illness. Outside, a fierce blizzard raged, a white, suffocating blanket that swallowed the world whole, promising 10 degrees Fahrenheit or colder. The wind, a mournful banshee, rattled the window panes, and the roar of it was a constant, oppressive companion. Then a sound so faint it was almost a trick of the wind snagged his attention, a soft scratching at his door. His initial thought, born of weary resignation, was a wayward branch, perhaps a pine bough dislodged by the storm, scraping against the sturdy wood. But then it came again, undeniably, a soft, pained whimper, so fragile it seemed impossible to have traveled through the storm's fury. It was a sound that pierced the thick, icy shell he'd built around himself, stirring a forgotten sense of compassion, a flicker of warmth in the cold, desolate landscape of his heart. The scent of burning wood and something else, something warm and intriguing, was a confusing beacon in the blinding, bitter chaos. Anya the bobcat, her body a rigid coil of pain and desperation, pressed closer to the strained, unyielding wall. The cold was a constant, paralyzing vice, seeping into her very bones, a cold far worse than any she had ever known. Her two kits, tiny bundles of shivering fur, huddled against her belly, their whimpers, thin and reedy, a constant reminder of her failure. Food had become a memory, warmth a dream. The blizzard was a malevolent spirit, stealing their breath, their strength, their hope. Every instinct screamed to flee, to find cover, to disappear into the familiar shadows of the forest, but the forest offered only more white death. The wind tore at her ears, stinging her raw, exposed skin. The relentless snow blinded her, erased all familiar landmarks. This wooden wall, this source of the confusing warmth, was a last, desperate gamble, a place where the scent of fear was outweighed by the promise of heat. Her injured paw throbbed relentlessly, a dull, agonizing ache that made every step a torment, every movement a risk. She nudged her head against the door again, a soft, almost inaudible scrape, and let out another pained mewl, a sound she despised, a sound of weakness, but one she could no longer suppress. Inside, the giant shifted. David, his heart thrumming with an unfamiliar urgency, hesitated. A wild animal. Out here, in this storm. It was unheard of, suicidal. But that whimper, it sounded so small, so utterly vulnerable. He grabbed a thick blanket and a powerful flashlight, his movements stiff from years of solitude. He carefully, slowly unlatched the heavy bolts, the metal groaning in protest. A blast of icy wind ripped through the opening, carrying with it the sharp, wild scent of pine, and something else. Something unmistakably animal. Anya instinctively recoiled, her hackles rising, a guttural growl rumbling in her chest despite the pain. The bright, blinding light was a shock, slicing through the darkness, illuminating the swirling maelstrom of snow. The giant was immense, a towering shadow against the cabin's interior light, holding a strange glowing orb. Fear, sharp and cold, clawed at her throat. This was it, the end. But the smell of warmth, of safety, was tantalizing, a siren song against the reality of freezing to death. Her kits whimpered again, a high-pitched plea that tore at her resolve. She couldn't run, not with her paw, not with them. David, seeing the wild eyes, the tense, hunched body, spoke in a low, soothing voice, a voice he hadn't used in years. "Hey there, little one. It's okay. You're safe." He knew it was futile, that a wild bobcat wouldn't understand, but the words felt right. He knelt slowly, deliberately, keeping his movements minimal, extending the blanket slowly, like an offering. The beam of his flashlight revealed the mother, thin and gaunt, her fur clotted with ice, and then the tiny, fragile forms of two kits, barely larger than his hand. His breath hitched. They wouldn't survive the night out here. The blanket, it was soft, thick, radiating the same intriguing warmth as the giant. The kit, nestled closest to her, let out a tiny, inquisitive chirp, then shivered violently. Anya watched the giant's hand, so close, so large. Every fiber of her being screamed danger, but the chill that had begun to numb her senses was creeping. The instinct to protect her young, a primal, overwhelming force, fought against her fear. She let out a low growl, a warning, but it lacked its usual force. David moved even slower, pushing the blanket further, then placing a bowl of water, steaming slightly on the ground just inside the threshold. The water, clean and untainted, released a faint vapor into the icy air. It was a gamble. "Water," he murmured, "for your little ones." Anya's ears swiveled, processing the unfamiliar sound, the strange offering. Water. For days, the only moisture had been snow, bitter and unsatisfying, doing little to quench the deep, aching thirst that ravaged her. Her tongue, rough and dry, felt like sandpaper. The kits mewed again, their little bodies trembling. She took a tentative step forward, then another, dragging her injured paw. Each movement was a searing lance of pain, but the water called to her. She dipped her head, her rough tongue lapping greedily, the clean, refreshing liquid a jolt of life. It burned her throat initially, then soothed, washing away the metallic tang of fear and the dust of days without sustenance. She drank until her belly was full, then nudged her kits towards the bowl, watching as they too tentatively lapped at the miraculous liquid. The giant did not move, did not threaten. He merely sat, a silent, watchful presence. The warmth from inside the strange den was a balm, a promise. Anya still tensed, every muscle coiled for flight, but the thirst was gone, replaced by a dull ache of hunger. She felt a strange pull, a reluctant trust beginning to form, a fragile thread spun from desperation and the overwhelming instinct to survive, to keep her kits alive. Hours later, the storm still raged, but inside the small cabin, a fragile peace had settled. Anya, her paw wrapped in a makeshift bandage fashioned from an old tea towel, lay curled on the soft, warm blanket David had placed near the wood stove. Her kits, fed on a strange, milky liquid offered by the giant, were nestled against her, their tiny bodies rising and falling in deep, peaceful sleep. The giant had moved away, now occupying a large, soft-looking nest of his own, his breathing deep and even. The warmth enveloped them, a luxurious comfort that seeped into her aching bones, coaxing her tense muscles to relax. The initial fear of the giant was still there, a low hum beneath her skin, but it was overshadowed by the profound relief, the sheer physical sensation of pain turning into a soft, dull throb, of hunger turning into a pleasant fullness. A needle, sharp and stinging, had been a momentary terror, followed by a wave of drowsiness that had pulled her into a fitful slumber. She remembered the gentle hands, large but surprisingly soft, probing her paw, the unfamiliar smell of antiseptic. The giant hadn't hurt her, only brought a different kind of discomfort, one that promised healing. She heard the soft crackle of the fire, the rhythmic ticking of a strange device on the wall, and the distant howl of the storm, now muffled and less menacing. The world outside was still a frozen hell, but here, in this strange den, with this strange silent giant, there was a fragile promise of tomorrow. It was a new kind of wilderness, one she didn't understand. But for the first time in days, Anya felt the profound, overwhelming urge to simply rest, to heal, to trust, just a little, in the inexplicable kindness of a human. The frigid air, sharp enough to steal breath, pressed against David's frosted window panes, a relentless siege of winter's worst. Inside, the quiet hum of his old furnace was the only counterpoint to the howling wind. But then, a new sound, faint and desperate, scratched at the edges of the night. A soft, persistent tap against the glass. David, a man whose life had settled into the quiet rhythm of solitary routine since his Martha had passed, felt an unfamiliar jolt of alarm, then a deeper, more primal instinct stir. He reached for the heavy-duty flashlight by the back door, its beam cutting a stark path through the living room's gloom. What could possibly be out there, in this merciless cold at nearly 10 below zero? He unlatched the back door, a blast of icy air making him wince, and stepped onto the porch. The porch light, usually sufficient, was lost in the blizzard's embrace, turning the world into a swirling canvas of white. He aimed the flashlight towards the sound, and the beam, like a spotlight on a silent stage, illuminated a scene that punched the air from his lungs. Pressed against the frosty pane of his kitchen door, a creature of the wild yet utterly vulnerable stared back. It was a bobcat, no mistaking those tufted ears and short tail. But this was no hunter. This was Ember, the mother, a shadow of her former self, emaciated, her fur plastered with snow and ice. Her eyes, usually fierce, were wide, black pupils dilated with a desperation that was almost human. And then David saw them, huddled close to her belly, two tiny shivering bundles of fur, her kits barely more than a breath against the biting cold. They whimpered, small lost sounds that tore at something deep inside David, a place he thought had long since calcified. The mother bobcat, Ember, met his gaze, then, with an astonishing tenderness, she pawed at the glass again, a soft, deliberate tap. It wasn't a scratch of aggression, it was a plea, a gesture that shattered the hardened shell around David's heart. Against every instinct that screamed, wild animal and danger, against every cautionary tale he'd ever heard, he knew with a certainty that was both terrifying and profound, he had to open that door. The sound of the latch clicking echoed in the frigid air. A booming cannon shot to Ember's ears. Her muscles tensed, ready to bolt, but the cold was a heavy anchor, and her kits, two small, fragile shadows of herself, were too weak to move. She watched the giant human, David, his breath pluming in the icy air, as the door slowly creaked inward. A gust of warm air, a miracle in this frozen world, washed over her, carrying with it strange scents. Wood smoke, something sweet, and a faint, comforting smell of warmth. Her instincts screamed danger, retreat, protect, but her body screamed exhaustion, hunger, cold, and her kits, Pip and Dot, tiny bundles of shivering fear, whimpered their small cries, a direct assault on her maternal heart. She took another tentative step, dragging her small family with her. The warmth inside was overwhelming, a sudden, delicious shock to her ice-numb paws. Her eyes darted around the brightly lit entryway, seeing a vast enclosed space, so different from the endless, wind-blasted forest. The giant human, David, moved slowly, his large hands reaching for something. Ember instinctively flattened herself, a low growl rumbling in her chest, a warning to her kits to stay hidden. But the human didn't approach. Instead, he placed a soft, thick blanket on the floor, and then a small, shallow bowl. The smell was intoxicating. Water, fresh and clear, and then meat. Raw, enticing, a scent she hadn't encountered in days. Pip and Dot, sensing her hesitation, nudged against her, their tiny bodies trembling. The human, David, had backed away, giving them space. The internal battle was fierce. Survival against deep-seated fear. Thirst and hunger won. She crept forward, Pip and Dot following her every move, their small paws silent on the unfamiliar floor. The water tasted like heaven, cool and clean, rinsing away the acrid taste of frost and starvation. The meat, though strange, and not what she usually hunted, was soft, yielding, and filled her aching stomach with a warmth she hadn't felt in weeks. After they had eaten, a strange, sleepy sensation began to creep over Ember. The constant vigilance, the relentless hunt for warmth and food, had been replaced by a profound sense of safety. The giant human, David, moved around them, his presence no longer threatening. He spoke in a soft, rumbling voice, words Ember didn't understand, but the tone was gentle, soothing. He carefully placed a soft, clean blanket over them. The fabric was plush, a luxurious softness against her thin fur, and the warmth, oh, the warmth, seeped into her bones. Pip and Dot nestled deeper into her, their small bodies finally relaxing, their shivering subsiding. She felt a strange prick, a fleeting sting, and then a profound wave of drowsiness. The giant human's hands, so large and initially terrifying, now felt strangely comforting as they gently adjusted the blanket around her and her kits. Ember's eyes, heavy with exhaustion, finally closed. The world outside, with its freezing winds and constant threats, faded into a distant memory. Here in this strange, warm den, nestled against her kits, protected by the benevolent giant David, she felt something entirely new: trust. The pain in her joints, the gnawing hunger, the bone-deep cold, were replaced by a profound, almost unbelievable comfort. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, Ember, the Bobcat mother, Pip and Dot were safe. The fear had not entirely vanished, but it was overshadowed by a deep, healing warmth, a silent promise of rehabilitation in the gentle hands of a human. Can a wild, wounded predator ever truly trust the hand that saves it? The first tense hours in David's home would reveal more than just frostbite. They would expose the raw, bleeding scars of a life lived on the edge, and the fragile, unpredictable dance between instinct and desperate hope. The world had shifted from the biting wind and crushing snow to a new kind of cold, a sterile chill that prickled spirit the Bobcat's whiskers. She was in a box, a dark, shaking confinement, her two kits pressed against her trembling flank. Fear, a cold, hard knot in her belly, tightened with every jolt. Then a new sensation, an overwhelming warmth, a heat radiating from some unseen source, chasing away the bone-deep ache of the frost. The box stopped. A giant shadow loomed, then a blast of light. Spirit hissed, a guttural warning ripped from her throat, her claws unsheathed. This giant, with its soft voice and strange smell, was a threat. It had moved them, taken them from the familiar, however cruel outside. Her kits whimpered, burrowing deeper into her belly fur. Every muscle in Spirit's emaciated body was coiled, ready to spring, despite the searing pain in her leg. David had cleared a generous space near his old stone fireplace, laying down a thick, worn blanket as an offering. He watched, his heart a strange mix of exhilaration and profound worry, as Spirit, the mother bobcat he'd instinctively named, was carefully transferred from the transport crate into the makeshift den. She was a coiled spring, a bundle of tawny muscle and bristling fur, her amber eyes burning with an almost primal fury. Every soft word he uttered, every tentative movement he made, was met with a low growl, a guttural rumble that vibrated through the air, or a lightning-fast hiss that showed an alarming array of razor-sharp teeth. "Easy there, girl," he murmured, though his voice felt too loud in the sudden quiet of the living room. He placed a shallow bowl of water, then another, with some softened, high-protein cat food, all he had on hand, a good distance from the makeshift bed. Spirit's leg, he noticed, was worse than he'd initially thought. She was barely putting any weight on it, holding it at an unnatural angle. Her ribs showed clearly beneath her matted fur, a stark testament to the harsh winter and the struggle for survival. He felt a sudden, sickening lurch of doubt. What had he done? This wasn't some stray house cat. This was a wild animal, a predator, and she was clearly injured, deeply traumatized. He was out of his depth. He needed help, professional help. His mind immediately went to Sarah. Sarah, the young, fiercely intelligent local veterinarian, with her passion for wildlife and her sharp, no-nonsense manner. They'd butted heads more than once over the proposed conservation project that would border his land, disagreeing on everything from land use to the best way to protect the local deer population. He sighed, running a hand over his tired face. It was going to be an awkward call. The sound of the giant's rumbling voice was low, and then it retreated, leaving Spirit alone with the warmth and the pulsing ache in her leg. Her nostrils flared, testing the air. The scent of the giant, a mix of wood smoke and something sweet, was strong, but there was also a new, intriguing smell. Meat, raw, rich, and undeniably tempting. She hadn't tasted fresh meat in what felt like an eternity. Her stomach rumbled, a painful, hollow echo of her hunger. But the fear was still paramount. Every rustle of the blanket, every crackle of the fire, made her flinch. She kept her body between the open crate and her kits, a living shield. Hours crawled by, marked only by the shifting light from the fireplace. Spirit watched the giant from beneath hooded lids, noting its distant movements, its careful avoidance. The meat, forgotten in her initial terror, now called to her with an insistent pull. The hunger was a gnawing beast, demanding to be fed. Slowly, cautiously, she stretched her neck, sniffing at the air. The giant was truly gone from the immediate vicinity. She nudged her kits, checking on their sleep. Then, with a low whimper of pain from her injured leg, she dragged herself forward, every instinct screaming caution, but her belly overriding the fear. The water was cool, clean, a blessing on her parched tongue. The meat, it was soft, easy to chew, and the taste was pure heaven. Each bite brought a wave of relief, a tiny flicker of trust replacing the burning fear. It was still a harsh world, but in this strange, warm box, with the giant keeping its distance, perhaps, just perhaps, it wasn't quite as hostile. The biting wind still howled, a reminder of the unforgiving world outside. But inside, a different kind of storm was brewing. David braced himself, the clatter of a heavy-duty truck approaching his remote cabin, a harbinger of the past he tried to bury. He watched as a woman, no longer the fiery young intern he remembered, but still possessing that same sharp glint in her eyes, emerged from the driver's seat. Dr. Sarah Evans. The name tasted like ash on his tongue. Old grudges, like forgotten embers, began to glow with a dangerous heat. Can a fractured past yield a fragile future? He needed her desperately, but the bitterness in his gut was a cold companion. Sarah stepped out, the blast of icy air invigorating her. David's cabin, nestled against the snow-laden pines, looked exactly as she remembered, a rustic fortress against the world and against people. She gripped her vet kit, its weight a familiar comfort, a shield against the man she was about to face. Her skepticism was a tangible thing, a cloud of icy breath in the frigid air. "David," she said, her voice clipped, professional. "What is it?" But then she saw them. 3 pairs of luminous, bewildered eyes peered out from the makeshift den David had created in his heated garage. The sight of Spirit the Bobcat and her 2 kits, small, vulnerable bundles of fur, instantly shifted her focus, melting away some of the frost around her professional demeanor. Spirit felt a new presence, a new scent. This human was different from the kind one. This one moved with purpose, a quickness that made her muscles tense. Her leg throbbed, a relentless, burning ache, and the scent of the strange 2-legger was strong, overwhelming. She tried to flatten herself further, to become invisible, but the pain shot through her. a searing jolt with every tiny movement. The little ones, her kits, huddled close, their small bodies trembling. They were hungry, so hungry. She tried to tell them, to purr a comforting rumble, but her throat was dry, her body too weak. The two-legger's hands moved, not touching, but getting closer, a cold metal glinting. Fear, sharp and primal, pierced through her exhaustion. She hissed a weak, raspy sound that barely left her throat. Sarah approached the makeshift den cautiously, her eyes scanning Spirit the bobcat's form, the female's matted fur, the way she favored her hind leg. It all screamed trouble. She knelt, her movements slow and deliberate, trying not to alarm the terrified animal. The smaller kits, still too young to fully understand the danger, pressed themselves against their mother, their tiny cries a plaintive counterpoint to Spirit's low growls. David, for once, was silent, a silent sentinel in the background. As Sarah moved closer, the full extent of the injury became clear. Spirit's hind leg was swollen, an angry purple-red, with a deep gash near the paw. "Looks like a snare," Sarah muttered, her voice grim, the words cutting through the uneasy silence. A flash of anger, cold and sharp, ignited within her. Humans could be so cruel. The human's touch was a strange mix of gentle and firm, but the pain flared, a sudden, blinding agony that made Spirit cry out, a guttural sound torn from her very depths. A small prick, a sting, followed by a warmth spreading through her veins, not the warmth of sunshine, but something heavier, a weight that began to drag at her eyelids. The fear was still there, a knot in her stomach, but it was receding, softening at the edges. The world around her blurred, and the sounds became distant, muffled. She felt a large, soft cloth draped over her, the scent of the kind human clinging to it, a strange comfort. Her exhaustion, deep and bone-weary, finally claimed her. Under the influence of the mild sedative, Spirit the bobcat began to relax, allowing Sarah to conduct a more thorough examination. The snare injury was worse than she'd initially thought, deep and infected. But then as her hands moved along Spirit's belly, another, more profound discovery emerged. "She's pregnant," Sarah announced, her voice soft, almost a whisper, a stark contrast to the usual clinical detachment. David flinched, a low groan escaping him. Pregnancy. That explained the extreme vulnerability. The desperation that would drive a wild bobcat so close to human habitation in sub-zero temperatures. It explained her inability to hunt, her weakened state. The medical urgency, already high, now skyrocketed. The world around Spirit swirled with soft, muted colors. The ache in her leg was still there, a dull throb, but it no longer consumed her. She felt something warm around her, a blanket and a gentle murmur of voices. The big humans moved around her, their movements no longer sharp and frightening, but slow, deliberate. She felt another touch, this one on her back, a soothing stroke that made her purr, a soft, vibrating rumble deep in her chest. A small, strange sound, but it was hers. Her kits close by mewed softly, their small bodies pressing into her. A warmth spread through her, not just from the blanket, but from the realization that she was safe for now. David watched Sarah, her brow furrowed in concentration as she cleaned Spirit's wound. The tension between them, thick and palpable, just moments before, had momentarily dissipated, replaced by a shared focus on the suffering animal. "We need to get her on antibiotics and some pain medication," Sarah stated, her voice brisk, taking charge. "And she needs a quiet, warm place. A proper den, not just a corner of your garage." Her eyes met David's, a challenge in their depths. David, for his part, simply nodded, the full weight of the situation pressing down on him. Spirit the bobcat, injured, pregnant, and with two young kids to care for, was a monumental task. An uneasy alliance was forming, forged in the crucible of medical urgency. Their contrasting personalities, their past tensions were still present, a simmering undercurrent. Yet the urgency of Spirit's condition had, for the moment, forged a tenuous bond. Spirit felt a different kind of sensation now, The stinging was gone, replaced by a comforting pressure around her leg. The humans were still there, their voices low and calm, not the angry bark she sometimes heard from two-leggers. She felt something cold and wet on her tongue, then a bland, soft taste she didn't recognize. But that was somehow soothing. Water. Clean, cool water. It trickled down her throat, easing the dryness, a sensation of relief she hadn't experienced in days. Her body, still weak, still aching, began to relax further, sinking into the soft blanket. The sounds of the kit's breathing, steady and even, filled the quiet space, a balm to her weary soul. As the immediate crisis stabilized, Sarah stood up, stretching her back. "She's going to need round-the-clock care, David, especially with the pregnancy." She looked at him, her expression softening almost imperceptibly. "This isn't something you can do alone." It wasn't an offer of help, not yet, but an acknowledgement of the shared burden. David ran a hand through his thinning hair. "I know," he rumbled, his voice rough with emotion. He glanced at Spirit, the bobcat, now resting more peacefully, her breath shallow but even. The fear was still there, the memory of her struggle, but it was slowly being overshadowed by a burgeoning sense of hope. The hard part, the long, grueling process of rehabilitation, was just beginning. The crushing weight of cold and hunger had lessened, replaced by a new kind of terror. Spirit, the bobcat, felt the tremor of unfamiliar paws beneath her, the odd, soft texture of something that wasn't frozen earth. The giants had moved her again, a blur of strange smells and jarring sounds. Her two kits, Pounce and Whisper, were still tucked close, their tiny bodies a desperate anchor in a world that spun with confusion. Every muscle in her body screamed for the wild, for the familiar bite of pine needles underfoot, the scent of fresh kill. But the wild had become a betrayal, a freezing maw that threatened to swallow her and her precious young. The air around them was no longer a dagger, a strange warm air, like the breath of a large unseen creature, enveloped them. Sometimes a giant hand would come near, carrying a curious scent, not of prey, but of something mild, something soft. She snarled, a low, guttural warning that vibrated through her chest, but the hand merely paused, then retreated. It was a dance she knew, a delicate balance of assertion and caution. Days blurred into a routine of meticulous care. For David, the world outside the small, makeshift den in his sunroom had receded. His grief, a constant, heavy companion, now had a focal point outside himself. He found himself moving with deliberate slowness he hadn't known he possessed. Each step, each gesture, measured and gentle. Sarah, the young woman from the wildlife rescue, was a steady, reassuring presence, guiding him through the intricate steps of bobcat care. "Just a tiny bit, David," Sarah would whisper, her voice a balm in the quiet room, as he tried to administer the liquid medication to Spirit. The first few times had been a battle, a flurry of razor-sharp claws and a guttural snarl that raised the hairs on David's arms. But gradually a fragile truce had formed. Spirit, though still wary, would endure the strange, bitter taste, her powerful jaw clamped tight, before settling back down, her eyes never leaving his. He spent hours simply observing them, the way Spirit would groom her kits with a fierce tenderness, the soft chirps they made as they nursed, the restless flick of her tail, even in sleep. He began to talk to them, his voice a low rumble, telling them about the world outside, about the deer that sometimes wandered through his woods, about the crisp winter air that smelled of pine and coming snow. He'd read somewhere that animals responded to the human voice, even if they didn't understand the words. For David, it was less about communication and more about connection, about pouring the quiet sorrow in his own heart into a vessel that could understand pain. In Spirit's desperate fight for survival, he saw echoes of his own struggle. The way she clung to her young, the unyielding will to simply be, resonated with the raw, ragged edge of his own loss. He remembered the feeling of being utterly alone, adrift in a sea of despair, and slowly, imperceptibly, in the simple act of caring for these broken creatures, He realized he was mending his own shattered heart. Each careful scoop of specialized food, each warm blanket laid over the den, was a stitch in the fabric of his own healing. Spirit felt the warmth, a soft, radiating comfort that seeped into her aching bones. It was a luxury she hadn't known since the last summer sun, a stark contrast to the relentless, bone-chilling cold that had haunted her for weeks. The giant David had brought it, his massive frame moving with a surprising gentleness. She still tensed when he came too close, her instinct screaming danger, but the warmth and the strange, bland-tasting food he offered slowly chipped away at her ingrained fear. The food, too, was a miracle. Not the tough, stringy meat of a desperate hunt, but something soft, rich, and easy to swallow. Her stomach, a cavern of hunger for so long, slowly began to feel full. Her body, a canvas of aches, began to quiet. Pounce and Whisper, her precious kits, no longer whimpered with hunger. Their small bodies were filling out, their movements growing stronger. This giant, David, was not a predator. He was provider. Sarah, witnessing David's gentle perseverance, and started to understand the man behind the gruff exterior. He wasn't just a rescuer, he was a guardian. The way he spoke to Spirit, the almost tender caution in his movements, revealed a depth of empathy she rarely saw. He treated the wild bobcat with a respect that acknowledged her inherent wildness, even as he tended to her wounds. One afternoon, as David sat quietly reading in a chair a few feet from the den, Spirit slowly emerged. Her movements were fluid, cautious, but she didn't bolt. Her emerald eyes, once clouded with terror and pain, now held a flicker of something new. She watched him, her head slightly tilted, assessing. He didn't move, didn't make a sound, merely held her gaze with a quiet intensity. Then, to David's astonishment, she stretched. A long, languid stretch that ended with her settling down, not directly in his path, but closer than she ever had before. Her tail gave a tiny, almost imperceptible flick. It was a gesture of profound vulnerability, a tentative offering of peace. Spirit felt the shift. The giant wasn't a threat. His presence, once a looming shadow, was now a quiet hum of safety. The strange sounds he made with his mouth, the soft rumbling, had become a lullaby. Her body, still healing, found rest in his presence. The bitter taste of medicine was always followed by the sweet relief of food, the sting of a needle by the enveloping warmth of the blanket. He was not merely a provider, he was a presence that didn't demand, only offered. One evening, as David brought her food, he kneeled slowly, gently placing the bowl down. Instead of recoiling, Spirit's gaze met his. Her body remained still. For a long moment, their eyes locked. A quiet understanding passed between them, a silent acknowledgement of the fragile bridge they were building. Then slowly, she dipped her head and began to eat, not snatching, but calmly, deliberately, as if accepting the gift. It was a small thing, a brief, wordless interaction, but for David it was everything. A flicker of trust, a fragile connection forged in the crucible of cold and despair. In Spirit's guarded acceptance, he found a reflection of his own yearning for connection, for healing. The broken man and the broken spirit, tethered by an unspoken understanding, had begun their journey back to wholeness, one gentle touch at a time. The biting cold that had been Spirit the bobcat's constant companion for weeks and was now replaced by a different kind of chill. An internal dread that pulsed with the throbbing agony in her leg. The warmth from the giant's fire had been a temporary reprieve, a fleeting illusion of safety, but the wound, a cruel memory of a trap's unforgiving grip, had worsened. A foul smell, alien and alarming, now emanated from the limb, and the simple act of shifting her weight brought on waves of dizzying pain. The giants, initially intimidating with their booming voices and towering forms, had slowly morphed in her instinctual mind from threats into sources of something less terrifying. The female giant, Sarah, with her gentle touches and soft murmurs, no longer triggered the primal urge to flee. But now even her touch, usually soothing, was accompanied by a new urgency, a franticness that mirrored the worsening ache in Spirit's leg. The leg felt like a dead weight, a burning ember attached to her very being. Each throb sent tremors through her pregnant body, a new layer of fear for the tiny fluttering lives within her. She didn't understand words, but the hushed, urgent tones of the giants, the way Sarah's brow furrowed, the grim set of David's jaw, it all communicated a grave peril. Sarah's voice, usually a soft balm, now held a sharp edge of concern. "David, it's worse than I thought. The infection's spreading. We can't wait for a transfer. She needs surgery now." The word surgery hung in the air, a stark declaration of the desperate situation. Spirit didn't know the word, but the immediate response it provoked in the giants, the sudden flurry of movement, the tightening of their expressions, told her it was a pivotal moment. David's kitchen, usually a place of quiet warmth and the comforting smell of wood smoke, was transformed. The old pine table, worn smooth by decades of use, was now draped in pristine white sheets, a sterile island in the rustic cabin. Tools glinted under the harsh beam of a powerful headlamp Sarah wore, casting dramatic shadows across David's weathered face. Spirit, her body heavy with the lives inside her, felt the familiar prick of a needle, a quick, sharp sting followed by a blissful, heavy warmth spreading through her limbs. Her mind, usually a whirlwind of instinct and survival, began to drift, the pain receding like a tide. The giants moved around her, their movements precise, their hushed voices a low hum, no longer threatening, but a strange symphony of concern. A faint, high-pitched whine escaped her, a half-conscious protest against the unfamiliar sensations. She felt a pulling, a strange manipulation of her flesh, but the deep sleep held her captive, muffling the agony. The sterile smell of disinfectant, sharp and alien, mingled with the familiar scent of David's old cabin. This wasn't the forest, wasn't the bitter fight for survival in the snow. This was different. The giants, their faces serious and intent, were working on her, not harming her. The trust, tentative and fragile, that had begun to blossom within her instincts solidified into something more profound in this vulnerable state. Her life and the lives of her unborn cubs were now entirely in their hands. Hours blurred into an eternity. The storm outside howled, mirroring the silent storm within the cabin. Every precise cut, every careful stitch was a battle against the encroaching infection, a race against time for Spirit and her precious cargo. David, usually a man of few words, offered quiet encouragement, passing instruments, his presence a steady anchor for Sarah. He felt the weight of Spirit's trust, the immense responsibility for these fragile lives. This wasn't just an animal. This was a mother, a survivor, holding the future of her kind within her. He remembered the desperate glint in her eyes when she'd first approached his cabin, seeking refuge, and that memory fueled his resolve. Slowly, agonizingly, the ordeal concluded. The leg, no longer swollen and angry, was now neatly bandaged, a pristine white against her tawny fur. The smell of antiseptic lingered, a sharp promise of healing. As the effects of the sedative began to wear off, Spirit felt a dull ache, a ghost of the past agony, but the searing pain was gone. A profound weariness settled over her, deeper than any she had known in the wilderness. She was still in the giant's den, but the fear was replaced by a strange sense of safety. The female giant, Sarah, stroked her head, her touch soft and reassuring. The male giant, David, spoke in low, soothing tones. Their towering forms no longer seemed menacing, but protective. Her instincts, honed by a life of struggle, now whispered a new truth. These giants, for reasons she could not comprehend, were trying to help. The unforgiving grip of the deep freeze had loosened, but the memory of its icy breath lingered. For Spirit, the Bobcat, the world outside the warmth of the cabin was still a blur of sharp edges and blinding white. Inside, though, a fragile new life had indeed emerged from the depths of her pain, and with it, a tentative peace. Yet the wild called, a constant, silent question. Could this fragile peace ever truly last? The large, quiet spaces of the human's den, once terrifying, were now different. The stinging in her side had faded, replaced by a dull ache that spoke of healing, not harm. The giant male, David, moved with a slowness that no longer felt like a threat. He was a presence, a warmth, a provider. She felt the vibrations of his steps before she saw him, and the sound of his low voice, once a rumble of fear, now carried a strange, comforting cadence. The small, quick-moving humans, the female, named Sarah, also came and went, her hands gentle as they replenished the water and the strange, delicious food that tasted of meat, but was soft and easy to swallow. The needles, once a sharp, sudden pain, now felt like a quick prick, followed by a wave of drowsiness that pulled her into a deep, dreamless sleep. Her two kits, once so helpless, now chased each other with uncoordinated leaps and playful snarls, their tiny bodies a blur of motion under her watchful eye. They were stronger, their meows more insistent, their fur softer. She would watch them, a low rumble in her chest, a sound that was less a growl and more a purr, a primal echo of contentment. Their antics, the way they pounced on her tail or batted at a stray feather, were a constant reminder of the life she had fought so hard to protect. David, from his comfortable chair, would often watch them too, a soft smile on his face, a look that Spirit the Bobcat instinctually understood as non-threatening, even, kind. He called them Shadow and Whisper, names that the female human, Sarah, had suggested, and Spirit found herself associating the strange sound with her bustling, curious offspring, the human giants. David and Sarah celebrated each small victory. Not a twitch of her ear, a full bowl of food, the kit's first wobbly climb onto a chair. Each was met with soft coos and quiet, pleased murmurs. Spirit the Bobcat, still wary, began to associate their presence with comfort, with food, with a sense of safety she hadn't known since before the cold had become a hunter itself. She would listen to their low conversations, the unfamiliar sounds of their language, sensing the shifts in their tones, the quiet laughter, the occasional sigh. She sensed a connection between them, not just of work, but of something deeper. The female Sarah, with her gentle hands, would sometimes sit near her enclosure, speaking softly, her voice carrying stories of her own struggles, but of other creatures she had helped. David, in turn, began to speak of his late mate, a human female, his voice laced with a sadness that even Spirit the Bobcat could perceive, a mirrored echo of her own past loss. In their shared vulnerability, a strange, unexpected bond was forging. The cabin, once a symbol of David's isolation, a fortress against the world, now pulsed with life, with an unexpected warmth that radiated even to Spirit's guarded heart. One afternoon, David approached her enclosure. He moved with his usual deliberate slowness, his gaze steady, his large hand holding a small piece of something that smelled intensely of meat. Spirit the Bobcat watched him, her ears swiveling, her body tense, but not rigid. He opened the hatch slowly, the click of familiar, non-threatening sound. He placed the meat inside, then hesitated, his hand hovering. He didn't try to touch her, didn't try to invade her space. He just waited, a silent invitation in his steady gaze. She ate the meat slowly, deliberately, never breaking eye contact. Then a moment passed, an eternity. David's hand moved not towards her face, not towards her recovering flank, but gently, tentatively, towards the top of her head, just behind her sensitive ears. Spirit the Bobcat stiffened, a flicker of the old fear. Every instinct screamed at her to recoil, to lash out, to protect herself from the giant, from the potential harm. But something held her. The gentleness in his eyes, the unwavering patience, the sheer, quiet respect in his posture. She felt the brush of his fingertips, light as a feather against her fur. It was a strange sensation, not painful, not frightening, but unexpected. A warmth, a connection. She did not flinch. She did not growl. She did not move. And then he stroked her, once, Twice, a slow, soft motion that spread a strange, unfamiliar comfort through her. It was a touch that acknowledged her wildness, but offered reassurance. A touch that broke through the last vestiges of her fear. In that moment, the giant human was not a threat, but a source of solace, an ally. It was a monumental step, a silent declaration of trust, of acceptance, a deepening of a bond she hadn't known she craved. The quiet peace, a fragile blanket woven from trust and healing, shattered without warning. For weeks, a tentative rhythm had settled over David's remote cabin. Snowfall after snowfall had transformed the landscape into a pristine, silent world. And within its embrace, the bobcats had begun to unfurl. Luna, the mother bobcat, still carried a flicker of the wild in her golden eyes, but the sharp edges of her fear had softened. Her two kits, Pounce and Whisper, were growing bolder, their tiny, spotted bodies now sturdy enough to chase imaginary mice through the cabin's living room, their purrs a rumbling counterpoint to the crackling fire. David, a man whose solitude was as much a part of him as his weathered hands, found a quiet contentment in their presence. He'd spend hours simply watching them, the soft exhalations of the sleeping kits a balm to old wounds he hadn't even realized he carried. They were thriving, a testament to the warmth, the food, the unwavering safety he offered. But peace, like fresh snow, was easily disturbed. It was during his usual morning perimeter check, the biting wind stinging his cheeks, that he saw them. Not the delicate tracery of a rabbit's hop, nor the heavy prints of a deer, but something else entirely, human, large, deliberate, and undeniably out of place in his secluded haven. He knelt, his 65-year-old knees protesting the cold, and traced the outline in the freshly fallen snow. A particular tread, a worn sole pattern he knew all too well. Mark. A knot tightened in David's stomach, cold and hard as granite. Mark Jenkins. The name was a curse, a bitter taste on his tongue. A poacher, a trapper, a man whose disregard for wildlife was as profound as David's dedication to it. Their paths had crossed before, always ending in confrontation, always with David trying to protect what Mark sought to exploit. Luna, curled up near the warmth of the wood stove, sensed the shift in David. Her ears, perpetually swiveling for danger, twitched. She watched him pace, his brow furrowed, his hands clenching and unclenching. The scent of worry, sharp and acrid, permeated the air. Her own instincts, honed by a lifetime of survival, flared. She remembered the fear, the hunters, the sudden violent sounds that ripped through the quiet of the forest, the humans in the big metal box with their loud voices and the stinging jab of the needle. Now this human, David, who had become a strange, comforting giant, radiated a new kind of tension. It was different from the hunger-driven panic of the cold or the pain of her injured leg, but it was just as potent. David's peace was shattered. The domesticity, the gentle routine, felt like a flimsy shield against the encroaching darkness. Mark must have heard whispers, rumors of the wildcats finding refuge nearby. Hunters, poachers, they had an uncanny way of sniffing out their prey, like vultures drawn to a scent on the wind. The thought of Mark laying traps of his cruel hands on Luna or her vulnerable kits sent a surge of hot, protective fury through David. He would not let it happen. Not after all they had endured, not after the fragile trust they had finally begun to build. That afternoon, David moved with a renewed, grim purpose. He hammered, he strung, he muttered to himself. Old fishing line, tin cans, a few small bells he'd used for holiday decorations years ago. He rigged a makeshift alarm system around the cabin's perimeter. Crude, yes, but effective enough to give him an early warning. Every rustle of the wind, every creak of the old wood made him jump. The feeling of being watched was unsettling, a prickle on the back of his neck that refused to dissipate. He found himself scanning the tree line, his eyes narrowing at every shadow, at every shift in the snow-laden branches. The forest, once a source of solace, now seemed to hold a hidden threat. Luna, ever watchful, mirrored David's tension. She felt the subtle tremor in the ground when he moved. heard the low rumble of his worries. The air felt charged, different from the peaceful quiet she had grown accustomed to. Her kits, Pounce and Whisper, sensed it too. They stayed closer to her, their play subdued, their bright eyes mirroring her caution. She remembered the gnawing hunger, the freezing nights, the constant threat of larger predators. She remembered the crushing weight of the trap, the metallic tang of fear, the searing pain in her leg. But she also remembered the gentle hands, the soft words, the warmth of the blankets. The promise of safety David had offered. Now that promise felt precarious, threatened by an unseen enemy. Her instincts screamed danger, but something else, a nascent trust in the large, kind human, urged her to stay, to fight for this fragile new life. David tried to project calm for the cats, stroking Luna's soft fur, offering extra morsels of venison. But his heart pounded a relentless rhythm against his ribs. The discovery of Mark's tracks hadn't just ended a period of peace. It had drawn a line in the snow, a stark declaration of war. A storm was brewing, not just in the skies, but in the shadowed woods, and David knew with a chilling certainty that he stood at its epicenter, ready to face whatever came. This new threat was external, menacing, and it foreshadowed a dramatic confrontation that would test the very limits of his resolve and the trust he had so carefully cultivated. The night air, already sharp enough to steal breath, turned truly vicious. Spirit, the Bobcat matriarch, had felt it in her bones for days, a shifting in the wind, a metallic tang that spoke of trouble, not just of snow. Her two kits, Pounce and Whisper, huddled closer, their small bodies radiating less warmth than usual. The scent of David, the large, gentle human who offered shelter and warm broth, was a familiar comfort. But tonight, another, more acrid smell drifted through the cabin walls. Fear. It wasn't Spirit's own, not entirely, but a new, sharp, human fear that pricked at her senses. Suddenly, the scent intensified, thick and oily. A crash echoed from the front of the cabin, a sound Spirit knew from the wild. A tree falling. But this was sharper, more metallic. David, the big human whose scent had always been laced with the calm aroma of wood smoke and old books, was now radiating pure alarm. Spirit watched from the corner of the living room, hidden beneath a heavy wooden table, her body a coiled spring. The new human scent was different from David's, coarse and aggressive, like a hungry predator. She heard David's low growl, a sound she hadn't known he possessed, followed by a violent thud. Her kits whimpered, their instincts screaming for flight, but there was no flight here, not with the storm raging outside and the unknown beast inside. The sounds of struggle grew louder. A heavy body hit the floor, and the Spirit saw a flash of movement. David's large frame, surprisingly agile, grappling with another man. The intruder was bigger, younger, radiating a cruel energy. Spirit's hackles rose, a low rumble vibrating in her chest. This was her den now, her family. She had fought coyotes and wolves for less. David, though a giant, was her protector. To see him vulnerable, struggling, ignited a primal fury within her. She saw David's face contorted in pain, heard a grunt of effort, and then a heavy blow connected. David cried out. Then a new sound cut through the din, a sharp, decisive crack. Not a branch, but something harder, metallic. The aggressive human grunted, staggered. A new human scent, sharp and determined, entered the cabin. Sarah. Spirit recognized her, another large human, but one who often carried the comforting smell of clean fur and quiet whispers. This time, Sarah's scent was mixed with gunpowder and resolve. Spirit saw her enter, a long, dark object in her hands. The struggle shifted. David, renewed by Sarah's presence, found a fresh burst of energy. The aggressive human, Mark, was now on the defensive. The air crackled with tension. Spirit, ever vigilant, scanned the room. In the chaos, as David and Sarah finally wrestled Mark to the floor, a sharp metallic glint caught her eye. It was a tool discarded by Mark, thin and razor-sharp. As David secured Mark's wrist with zip ties Sarah had produced, Spirit felt a sudden, searing pain in her already healing hind leg. she hissed, a sound of surprise and agony. In the scramble, the sharp edge had caught her, reopening the wound. It wasn't deep, but it was enough to sting, to remind her of past injuries, of the vulnerability she was constantly trying to overcome. Sarah rushed to David, checking him for injuries, her voice a low murmur of concern. Then her gaze fell on Spirit. The human's eyes widened, a new wave of worry washing over her features. She moved slowly, carefully, toward Spirit, her voice soft, attempting to soothe. Spirit, despite the pain, recognized the genuine concern. The humans were no longer fighting each other, they were tending to their own, and now to her. The sting in her leg was a fresh betrayal, a reminder that danger was always lurking, even in the safety of the cabin. But the sight of Sarah's concerned face, the gentle movements of her hands as she retrieved a small first aid kit, began to override the raw fear. Sarah approached, her hands moving with practiced ease. Spirit tensed, the memory of needles and restraint still fresh. But Sarah's touch was feather-light, her voice a continuous, gentle stream of reassurance. The antiseptic stung briefly, a familiar sensation that quickly faded into a cool, clean feeling. A new bandage, soft and white, was wrapped around her leg, securing the tiny wound. The pain began to recede, replaced by a dull ache, and then a sense of relief. She looked at David, who was now sitting, leaning against the wall, his breath coming in ragged gasps, but his eyes were fixed on her, filled with the same protective concern as Sarah's. The rough, coarse scent of Mark was still present, now confined to a corner, a defeated predator. But it was overshadowed by the familiar, comforting smells of David and Sarah, of warmth and care. Spirit closed her eyes, letting the new sensations wash over her. The quiet hum of the wood stove, the gentle pressure of the bandage, the lingering scent of her human protectors. The world outside remained a frozen, dangerous place, but here in the cabin, with her kits nestled beside her, and the gentle giants watching over them, a fragile sense of peace began to settle. The battle was over for now, but the road to full healing, for her and for David, had just taken another unexpected turn. The bitter wind still howled its last defiant breaths, but inside David's cabin, a different kind of miracle was unfurling. The lingering chill from Mark's malicious presence had finally dissipated, replaced by a warmth that hummed not from the old wood stove, but from a profound sense of peace. David, his 65 years etched into his kind face, watched with bated breath, his heart a drum against his ribs. Spirit the Bobcat, her body a taut curve of primeval strength and vulnerability, whimpered. It was a low, guttural sound, unlike the defiant snarls David had come to associate with her early days, or the soft chirps she'd sometimes give her older, now-grown cubs. This was a sound of primal effort, of life demanding its way. David and Sarah, a calm anchor in the storm of Spirit's travail, moved with practiced quiet. Spirit, who once viewed every human movement as a threat, now merely flicked an ear in their direction, a testament to the fragile bridge of trust they had so painstakingly built. The sting of the dart that had subdued her earlier, a confusing rush of warmth followed by a heavy drowsiness, was long forgotten. The warmth she felt now was different, deep within her, a burning anticipation. The soft, clean blankets Sarah had laid out were a welcome cushion against the harsh cabin floor, a stark contrast to the frozen earth she'd bedded down on for so many nights. The first cub, a tiny, crumpled miracle of fur and twitching limbs, emerged with a soft cry. Spirit immediately began to lick, her rough tongue a soothing balm. David let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding, a tear tracing a path down his weathered cheek. And this was it. This was the ultimate gift. Two more followed, each a testament to Spirit's indomitable will. 3 healthy, squirming, miniature bobcats, a complete surprise, a bounty of life after so much hardship. The cabin, which had felt a little too quiet since his wife's passing, now vibrated with new energy. The tiny mules, the soft rustling of Spirit cleaning her new litter, filled the air with a symphony of hope. Spirit, exhausted but utterly content, rested her head, her amber eyes, once clouded with suspicion and fear, now shone with a fierce maternal pride. She remembered the gnawing hunger, the desperate search for shelter in the unforgiving cold, the way the large, frightening giants had cornered her, the strange prick of the needle, and then the blessed warmth in soft bed. Now these same giants moved with a gentle reverence, their voices low and comforting. The memory of Mark's cruel traps, the jarring pain, the crushing fear, it all receded, replaced by the instinctual joy of new life. David knelt, his presence a comforting hum rather than a threatening shadow. He saw the scars on Spirit's flank, faint but still visible, remnants of a life lived on the ragged edge. He remembered her skeletal frame, the desperate glint in her eyes when she'd first appeared, a ghost against the snow. Now she was plump, vibrant, and a mother again. This new family tucked into the warm, safe den was a powerful symbol. It wasn't just Spirit's recovery, but a renewal for him too. The ache in his own heart, a constant companion since his wife had gone, began to ease, replaced by a quiet sense of purpose, a profound connection to this wild, resilient creature and her miraculous brood. He watched Sarah meticulously prepare a special meal for Spirit, shredded chicken, carefully warmed, a far cry from the meager scraps she'd once scrounged. Spirit ate with a quiet efficiency, her focus unwavering, her body regenerating, preparing to nourish her offspring. The feeling of a full belly, the taste of clean, rich meat, was a luxury she'd once only dreamed of during those brutal winter nights. The fear of starvation, a constant shadow in her wild existence, had vanished, replaced by a steady, comforting rhythm of provision. The days that followed settled into a rhythm of quiet awe and gentle care. David and Sarah, with their patient hands and steady presence, were no longer frightening giants, but providers, protectors. Spirit instinctively knew this. The prick of the needle from the vet, the strange smells of antiseptic, and quiet murmurs had been moments of disorienting fear, but each time they had led to relief. A healed wound, a full stomach, a safe haven. She understood in the deep, ancient part of her brain that these humans meant her no harm. They were her haven. As David watched Spirit nurse her new cubs, a profound sense of rightness settled over him. It wasn't just about rescuing an animal, it was about witnessing resilience, fostering life, and finding a new purpose in the process. The Bobcat family in their cozy den represented not just survival, but a thriving, vibrant future. A new beginning indeed. The crisp morning air of late spring carried the scent of thawing earth and new growth, a fragrance that was both a promise and a gentle ache in David's heart. Could he truly let go? The Bobcat family, Spirit, and her two robust kits had woven themselves into the fabric of his solitude. Healing old wounds he hadn't known were still festering. Their wildness had become a soothing counterpoint to the quiet echoes of his past. Spirit, from her new vantage point within the sprawling outdoor enclosure David and Sarah had meticulously constructed, felt the unfamiliar embrace of open sky above her. Days had blurred into a rhythm of gradual change. First, the small den had expanded, then a tunnel had led to a larger, open-air space, a half-wild world, still enclosed by a fence that hummed with a strange, invisible barrier. She had tested it, of course, her claws scraping against the unyielding wire, her nose twitching at the scents that flowed freely from beyond, yet could not be reached. The giant David and the female Sarah would bring food, placing it further and further into this new, expansive territory, encouraging her and the kits to explore, to leap, to stalk imaginary prey among the rural branches and rocks. The kits, now gangly and full of boundless energy, took to it like bobcats. They chased butterflies that flitted in through the gaps, pounced on shadows and scaled the sturdy oak saplings David had carefully transplanted. Their once matted kitten fur was now thick and marked with the distinct spots of their species, a testament to the nourishing care they'd received. The release day dawned, clear and bright, a perfect canvas for a difficult farewell. Sarah had arrived early, her movements quiet and purposeful. The strange scent of disinfectant and a lingering nervousness clung to her, even to David, who moved with a heavier gait than usual. Spirit sensed the shift in their demeanor. The food came earlier than usual, and their voices were hushed, filled with an undertone she couldn't quite decipher, yet recognized as significant. She watched them as they stood by the enclosure's farthest wall, near a section that now seemed slightly different, less rigid than before. There was a pause, a breath held in the air, then a click. A section of the wire, ingeniously camouflaged, swung inward, revealing not more enclosure, but the dense, beckoning green of the forest beyond. The scent of pine needles, damp earth, and the faint, tantalizing musk of deer flooded Spirit's nostrils. Her ears swiveled, processing the symphony of the true wild. The distant call of a crow, the rustle of unseen creatures in the undergrowth, the sheer, boundless expanse. This was the world her instincts screamed for, the world she had been born to reclaim. The kits, startled by the sudden opening, looked to her, their small bodies tense with anticipation. She took a tentative step, then another. The cool, damp soil under her paws was a sensation long missed, far different from the soft hay or the clean concrete of their recovery den. The air tasted richer, wilder. She pushed through a curtain of ferns, her keen eyes scanning the shadows, her body remembering the ancient rhythm of the hunt. One kit, then the other, followed close behind, their tails twitching with excited curiosity. She paused at the very edge of the verdant wilderness, her paws half buried in the leaf litter. The forest beckoned, a vast, complex tapestry of life and struggle. But something pulled her back, a force stronger than the immediate call of the wild. She turned her head, her golden eyes seeking out the two large figures standing still as statues by the now open gate. David, Sarah. A lifetime of instinct warred with a season of unexpected kindness. The memory of the bitter cold, the gnawing hunger, the pain that had gripped her leg all faded into the background, replaced by the warmth of a gentle hand, the consistent supply of food, the safe den. She remembered the big, soft voice, the way his fingers had so carefully dabbed ointment on her wounds. She remembered the taste of clean, fresh water from a bowl, the relief of a full belly after days of emptiness. There, in that shared gaze across the threshold of freedom, was a depth of gratitude that transcended species, a bond forged not of words but of trust and survival. Her eyes, clear and unclouded, conveyed everything she couldn't say. Thank you for life, for hope. With a final lingering glance, a silent acknowledgement of the extraordinary connection they had shared, Spirit turned fully toward the forest. Her ears swiveled once more, catching the distant scurry of a mouse, the rustle of leaves. This was her true home. With a silent command, a flick of her tail, she led her expanded family. For the kits were now truly wild, thanks to the lessons learned and the sanctuary provided, into the dappled light and shadow of the ancient woods. The dense undergrowth swallowed them whole, leaving only the swaying branches, the chirping birds, and the lingering scent of wildness in the air. David watched until the last rustle of leaves faded into the general murmur of the forest. The silence that followed was immense, filled with a mix of profound joy for their freedom and a gentle ache, a void where their presence had been. He felt Sarah's hand on his arm, a comforting pressure. He had let go, and in doing so, he had truly healed. The wild had given him back a part of himself he hadn't known he'd lost. And now he had given it back to the wild. More than just a memory, the biting winter's rescue had forged an unbreakable bond, a legacy etched not in stone, but in the enduring spirit of the wild and the human heart. David, once a man lost in the quiet ache of solitude, was no longer merely a widower haunting the echoing rooms of his cabin. The harsh grip of grief, which had mirrored the bitter cold of that fateful winter, had slowly receded, replaced by a warmth born of connection. He and Sarah, the young, determined wildlife rehabilitator, were now firm friends, their shared experience a cornerstone of an unlikely but profound kinship. Their conversations, initially revolving around Spirit and her kits, had broadened, encompassing the vast, complex tapestry of wildlife conservation. They became active advocates, their voices joining the chorus of those striving to protect the creatures of the sprawling wilderness that bordered David's property. David often walked the trails near his cabin, the familiar crunch of snow or fallen leaves beneath his boots a comforting rhythm. He moved with a new lightness, a quiet joy that resonated with the rustling of the pines and the distant call of a hawk. Occasionally, a flash of tawny fur would catch his eye, a movement in the underbrush, a shape too large and too graceful to be a domestic cat. It was never a direct encounter, never a bold appearance, but rather a fleeting glimpse, a shadow against the trees, a pair of luminous eyes observing him from the safety of the dense woods. He knew with an instinctual certainty that transcended mere sight that it was spirit, and sometimes by her side, he would see the smaller, playful forms of her offspring, now grown, almost indistinguishable from their mother. A knowing smile, gentle and full of profound gratitude, would grace his lips. He knew she was thriving. The scars of that bitter winter long healed, her lineage continuing, a vibrant testament to survival and resilience. She was a constant, living reminder of the extraordinary delicate balance between humans and nature, in the enduring power of compassion to heal even the deepest wounds, not just the physical ones, but the invisible fissures of the heart. His own heart, once cold and desolate, a barren landscape mirroring the desolate winter he had endured, now beat with a warmth that surprised him daily. It was a warmth fueled by hope, by the simple, profound joy of knowing that life, in all its wild and untamed beauty, persevered. He had found a renewed purpose, not in chasing after the past, but in protecting the future, in ensuring that other creatures, like spirit, had the chance to live out their lives unhindered, a testament to the fact that even in the darkest of times, light can break through. Sarah's visits to the cabin became more frequent, not out of necessity, but out of genuine friendship. They would sit by the crackling fire, sharing stories, sometimes of the animals Sarah was currently rehabilitating, sometimes of David's past, and always with a quiet reverence of Spirit. The memories of Spirit's initial terror, the way her tiny kits had huddled against her, their instincts screaming danger in the face of the towering, unfamiliar human, still lingered. He remembered the swift, bewildering journey in the carrier, the harsh clinic lights, the strange medicinal smells that had assaulted Spirit's keen senses, the sharp sting of the needle, a fleeting pain that quickly gave way to a profound drowsy relief, the blessed warmth of a soft blanket, the overwhelming taste of clean, cool water after days of parched thirst, the rich, meaty scent of food presented by giant, careful hands. Those hands, once alien and terrifying, had slowly, steadily become synonymous with comfort, with safety. The trust, painstakingly built over weeks and months, had become an unspoken language between species, a bridge over the chasm of fear. David and Sarah's continued friendship, their shared passion for conservation, in David's occasional, almost spiritual sightings of Spirit's thriving lineage, solidified the enduring legacy of that winter's rescue. It was a legacy not just of saved lives, but of transformed hearts. Spirit and her kits, living their wild, unscripted lives in the vast expanse of the forest, were more than just wild animals. They were symbols of healing, of the profound connections that bind all living things, and of the unwavering hope that even after the deepest sorrow, new purpose can blossom, wild and free, like a bobcat moving silently through the snow-dusted pines. If this story touched your heart, comment 1 if you're moved or 0 if you're speechless. Thanks for watching until the end. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more magical stories. See you next time.